This incident occurred over 2 decades ago, back when I was 16. I resided with my mom and stepdad in a remote area, 70 miles west of Las Vegas. It was a rare outing to visit friends. Granted the privilege of driving myself for the first time ever, the evening was pleasant, watching a movie and grabbing some food until it was time for me to adhere to my 10 p.m. curfew. A caution to find a payphone if I ran late. The night enveloped me as I drove my old '71 Chevy pickup through the unlit desert, approaching the first of the stop signs. I noticed an older sedan with its hazards on. A man, aged between 30 to 40, started walking toward me from the driver's side. Despite the isolated desert surroundings, my guard wasn't up. Assisting stranded individuals in the vast desert was common. People often face severe problems due to dehydration or wandering aimlessly. As the man approached, the scent of liquor wafted through, and I noticed another man in the passenger seat. Without cell phones at the time and a distant payphone, I couldn't alert the authorities about a potential drunk driver. The man explained his car had stalled and requested help. Familiar with push-starting manual cars, I agreed to assist, cautiously pushing their vehicle while they attempted to start it. Once the car started, they thanked me and then unexpectedly invited me to join them, declining politely. They veered to the side as I continued my journey, but their sudden decision to follow me altered the situation, running late from stopping to help them, and stranded in a road devoid of light. I felt a creeping unease. Attempting to shake them off, I turned down familiar roads, but their persistent pursuit heightened my anxiety. With every turn I took, they mirrored my movements. Realizing their intent to follow me, panic gripped me. Strategically, I navigated down roads leading to dead ends, yet they continued tailing me relentlessly. A surge of adrenaline drove me to attempt an escape. Pulling over, I observed them approach, then floored my truck, kicking up dirt and gaining some distance. Heading towards the gas station, a beacon in the deserted night, I made a frantic call home, explaining the harrowing events causing my delay. Relieved yet anxious, I informed my stepdad of the deserted gas station and hurried home, grateful to have evaded the unsettling encounter on those desolate roads. Arriving home, I breathed a sigh of relief at having escaped the tense situation on the road. I detailed the incident to my parents, and although I wasn't in trouble, the urgency to report the situation was evident. My journey home, which began as an ordinary night among friends, turned into a chilling episode. The memory of the road pursuit still echoes in my mind, a constant reminder of the fragility of security even in familiar settings. As years passed, the memory of that ominous night remained vivid, leaving a lasting impression. Despite the relief of having averted the worst in that situation, discomfort lingered, resurfacing whenever I traveled down desolate roads. The event altered my perception of safety and reinforced the importance of staying vigilant, especially in seemingly routine situations. That night of unease left invisible scars, a constant reminder of unforeseen danger and the need for constant awareness. Even in the most familiar places, even after so many years, the memories of that pursuit continue to resonate, a reminder of the vulnerability that permeates the dark unknown of the night. Coming back from a friend's place around 2:00 a.m., I embarked on a mostly freeway drive, lost in my thoughts and George Norrie's voice. I hadn't noticed another car joining me until it was tailgating me, expecting it to pass. I was surprised when it matched my speed on the left lane, just one of 2 cars on the road. The vehicle, an average black car with a single male occupant, piqued my suspicion. Attempting to create distance, I slowed down, yet the car matched my speed again, increasing my pace, hoping to reach other vehicles ahead. The car persisted in staying beside me, revealing this was no mere coincidence. Concerns of being alone with this car flooded my mind. Spotting a tow truck in the distance, I made it my goal, with the car staying parallel throughout. Spotting a police car, I thought of pulling up behind it, fearing the worst from every news story of drive-by shootings. Instead, I raced towards an exit, the black car following suit until we passed the police car. I should have stopped, but fear immobilized me. Panicked, I dialed 911, prompting the car to fall behind, hastening my exit and racing home. I hoped he hadn't tracked my route. The adrenaline-fueled drive ended as I reached home. Unsure if I'd been followed, feeling helpless, I vowed to reconsider late-night drives. The harrowing experience on the empty freeway left me rattled and vigilant. Arriving home, my nerves were frayed, replaying the intense drive in my mind. I considered reporting the unsettling encounter to the authorities, but without tangible evidence, I was at a loss. The incident lingered in my thoughts, a cautionary tale of late-night drives and the vulnerability of deserted roads. I shared my story with friends and family, cautioning them about the unpredictability of such encounters. From that night on, I became more cautious, avoiding solitary late-night drives and ensuring I wasn't alone on desolate roads. The fear and uncertainty of that moment stayed with me, a stark reminder of the dangers that could lurk in the darkness of the night. Undertaking aimless drives on deserted routes, guided only by my music and the endless road. In Nebraska, I often navigated less traveled paths, snaking through rural landscapes towards small towns and bustling cities. Nighttime drives became my solace, away from crowded roads. I'm a petite 22-year-old woman who frequently embarks on these solitary journeys. They serve as an escape from the tumultuous environment of my parents' alcoholism when I used to reside with them. Now, having moved out and finding stability, the compulsion for these therapeutic drives has waned. Yet, on the night of this incident, overwhelmed by an amalgamation of personal dilemmas I'd rather not recount, I felt an unshakable restlessness. Seeking respite, I left my understanding boyfriend with a kiss and a promise to return soon, then ventured into the night. Driving through the city for half an hour failed to soothe my inner turmoil. Hence, I extended my journey northward along the familiar, dimly illuminated routes. The desolate snow-covered fields and abandoned dwellings painted an eerie picture. As the clock struck 11 p.m., marking the time to turn homeward, a roundabout lay another 25 minutes ahead. Amidst this journey, a peculiar sight, a dark sedan parked carelessly with its driver's door ajar. Faint traces of what seemed like blood inside. Silence enveloped the scene, worsened by the absence of cell reception, leaving me isolated and uneasy. A solitary woman by an abandoned vehicle, a scenario reminiscent of true crime stories, set off alarm bells. Despite an inherent fear, I approached cautiously, calling out repeatedly, "Is anyone there? Are you all right?" The echoes of my voice faded into the silence, met with no response. Despite this, a lingering concern led me to stay a moment longer. A tense moment ensued as a gruff response emerged from the shadows. As I retraced my steps, I noticed puzzling details. The sedan had no external damage, despite the blood stains inside. Meanwhile, in my rearview mirror, a figure advanced towards me, masked and carrying an unidentified object, showing no signs of injury. Fear consumed me as I sped away, disregarding shouted commands. Racing towards the safety of the town, seeking refuge in a Walmart parking lot, I surrendered to overwhelming emotions, experiencing a breakdown. A call to a police officer friend offered guidance, and local authorities were informed. However, evidence was scarce, leaving me terrified and seeking solace close to my boyfriend, haunted by the harrowing experience with no further updates from the authorities. Despite reaching out to the authorities, the outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. The haunting memory of that night lingered, leaving me restless and on edge. I sought solace nestled close to my boyfriend, finding fleeting comfort in his presence amid the unnerving shadows of that harrowing experience. The lack of closure weighed heavily on my mind, a constant reminder of a night when danger prowled the desolate roads, and safety felt like a distant dream. The echoes of that encounter reverberated through my thoughts, leaving me questioning the intentions of those masked figures and the chilling possibility of what could have been. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the absence of any updates from the authorities fostered a lingering sense of unease. The questions remained unanswered, the perpetrators unidentified, and the sense of vulnerability persisted, a haunting residue from that fateful night. The once soothing drives, a sanctuary from past turmoil, now carried an undercurrent of apprehension. The solace I once found in the freedom of the open road was replaced by a cautious glance in the rearview mirror and an underlying wariness of the unknown. The incident left an indelible mark, a stark reminder of the unpredictability that lurked beyond the safety of familiarity. While life moved forward, a part of me remained tethered to that night, a constant reminder to remain vigilant, even in the most mundane of moments. In the absence of closure, I found solace in the support of loved ones, a beacon of light amid the lingering shadows of that unsettling encounter. Each passing day brought a glimmer of healing, but the memory of that night continued to cast a long, unsettling shadow on my sense of security. It was summer, I believe the day after the 4th of July. My husband and I were in the middle of a cross-country road trip through Texas. And for anyone who had driven across the entire state of Texas, you know that it is a very long and very barren state. Sometimes we'd go hours without seeing anything at all. And the towns we did pass through didn't consist of much more than a rusty old gas station, and maybe a few dusty little houses. Looking out the window, you would swear you were just driving through the same 5 miles of desert, just over and over. I had just started getting a headache and my husband suggested I'd take a quick nap to get rid of it. I remember allowing myself to doze off as I watched the beautiful colors of a desert sunset. The slowing of the car woke me up, and the first thing I noticed was how dark it was. I believe it was around 10 p.m. My husband had stopped at a gas station with a small shop. He told me he was going to grab us some food and asked if I needed to pee, knowing I might not have another chance for quite a while. I went into the shop to use the restroom. Both the men's and women's restrooms were down a little hall. From the open area of the shop, I was groggy and tired and realized how badly I needed to pee. So I shuffled into the restroom, quickly as I made my way the short distance from the door to the nearest of the 2 stalls. I made eye contact with a woman coming out of the only other stall. She didn't quite look homeless, but she was definitely messy looking. She had wild gray hair, almost shoulder length if it hadn't been sticking out in every direction from her head. It looked like it hadn't seen a brush in weeks. She was wearing ragged clothing as well, and a pair of ill-fitting black workout shorts. I remember noting her foam flip-flops, several layers on top, and one of them being a large purple and green coat. Keep in mind, this is Texas in July. The jacket was just hanging on her shoulders crooked like she hadn't bothered to take a few more seconds to put it on correctly. She was carrying something in a tied-up plastic grocery bag. I gave a quick smile as her eyes met, and she just stared at me in return. Then her face turned wild and intense looking. Her eyebrows were set as if she was angry, but her eyes had a wild, alive look. And this was when I felt the first tinge of something wrong. I tried to brush it off. She waddled over to the only sink, and I took my time shutting the stall door, because something about her posture in front of the mirror struck me as odd, and I was trying to figure it out. She was standing with her body more angled toward me, but her face was turned into the mirror. Her body was tense and legs slightly crouched, as if she was ready to act out. Her hands were not by her face or trying to fix her mess of hair or even being washed. They were at her sides with her elbows also slightly bent. I wasn't completely sure why, but I suddenly felt uncomfortable. I regretted leaving my purse and cell phone behind. I shut and locked the stall door, and I took my time using the toilet. I wanted her gone before I left the safety of the stall. I stayed there long after I had finished, but the woman was still there, so I waited longer. Finally, I heard the smacking of her flip-flops as she made her way to the door, and I heard the door open and then slam closed. The door was pretty heavy and it slammed the same way when I had entered. I stayed for a moment, and I allowed the wave of relief to wash over me before I reached for the lock. Then I paused. Fingers only an inch from the lock, I stayed as silent as I could manage to confirm what I had just thought I heard breathing. Yes, the woman had only pretended to leave. At this point, I was scared and confused. Why did she trick me into thinking she left only to stick around and be as quiet as possible? I knew something was very wrong. So, I stayed in the stall even longer. It must have been at least 20 minutes. But I had no way of knowing for sure. I could tell from the direction her breathing was coming from that she had positioned herself in the far corner, right next to the door, but far enough that I couldn't see her feet. Finally, I thought I heard her leave this time. I waited a few minutes to make sure she hadn't tried her trick again. I slipped out of the stall quickly, washed my hands, and rushed down the hallway of the store. It was pitch black outside, and I had no idea where she was, but she couldn't be far. A large man was checking out at the register, so I waited near a window display until he left the store, and quietly slipped out the door behind him. Sure enough, crouched right outside the front door was the woman. She seemed surprised as she stood and turned away, walking quickly around the side of the store. My husband was waiting in the car and asked me if I was okay. Since I had taken so much longer than usual, I said I would tell him all about it once we were away from that store. To preface this, I love to drive. 2 years ago, in the late hours of the night, my 1.5-year-old autistic daughter struggled to fall asleep. Occasionally, I'd place her in the car seat and take her for a drive, the only way she'd find a peaceful slumber. Living in a serene neighborhood, that night, around 9 p.m., my daughter had finally drifted off. Feeling hungry and hoping to deepen her sleep for a smooth transfer, I grabbed some food from a drive-thru and parked on a nearby side street to have my meal. As I finished eating, I glanced back at my daughter, only to be met with a sudden glare of blinding headlights tailgating my car a bit too closely. Assuming the driver intended to park nearby, I pulled away, cruising down the street. However, as I reached the end of the block and turned the corner, I spotted the same set of headlights again. Normally, on this semi-busy side street, traffic was common, but this driver was unnervingly close, tailing me aggressively. After attempting to give way by changing lanes, they persistently followed, recognizing it was the same sedan from the earlier encounter, now uncomfortably close with its high beams blinding me. I lamented not paying closer attention earlier. Trying not to succumb to paranoia, I took a few unnecessary turns and traversed my neighborhood, only to have the car doggedly follow, mirroring each turn and lane change. In a panic state, I reached out to my dad instead of the police, hoping for a solution. He, unfortunately, had poor reception and advised me to drive to the station. Over 40 minutes of relentless pursuit, swerving through lanes and intersections, I finally made it to the station. I found no one there, no officers, no patrol cars, not even any parked vehicles in the lot, completely alone. With my now fussing 1-year-old in the back seat, I felt vulnerable, exasperated. I bypassed the station and informed my dad of the absence. Spotting a sheriff's car, I honked and flashed my lights for attention, but to no avail. The car tailing me vanished into a nearby mall when the officer arrived, leaving me shaken as I took my daughter home. Despite my ordeal, law enforcement minimized the situation, claiming they never located the car, dismissing it as a non-incident. Frustrated, I refused to accept their conclusion and requested an escort home. Dishearteningly, the officer departed as soon as I parked, leaving me trembling as I brought my sleeping child indoors. The experience haunted me for days, compelling me to avoid night drives, steering clear of areas I once considered safe. In the aftermath of that harrowing night, haunted by the eerie pursuit and the indifference of law enforcement, my world shifted. Sleep became elusive, the mere thought of driving at night a haunting prospect. Every headlight that approached felt like a potential threat. Every quiet neighborhood street a potential echo of that past terror. The incident left an indelible mark, a chilling reminder that safety is often an illusion and that sometimes, in the dead of night, shadows take on shapes that linger long after dawn. As time passed, I remained vigilant, cautious of my surroundings, and steadfast in my commitment to safeguarding my child. The woods, once an escape, now held an air of foreboding. Night drives, once a remedy for restless sleep, transformed into a haunting memory, forever altering the landscape of our evenings. Yet, within this altered reality, a new resolve emerged: a vigilant watchfulness, an unwavering dedication to ensuring our safety, and an unspoken vow to shield my daughter from the shadows of that night. While the world outside may have dismissed it as an unsolved mystery or an overactive imagination, for me, it was a lesson etched into my consciousness. It was a night that taught me to trust my instincts, to seek help when needed, and to cherish the moments of calm amidst the chaos. That fateful night, shrouded in darkness, became a guiding light, a reminder to navigate life's path with caution, awareness, and an unyielding devotion to the safety of my loved ones.